Bellalar News says Sony execs delayed Marathon indefinitely, which we know, but specifically staff had no idea. One of you guys sent this video to me and I had not heard that. If it's true, staff didn't know that the game was being delayed until it was revealed publicly. That's crazy. Like, that's wild. You know, but it tells us a lot if that is the case, that staff had no idea and staff didn't know they were getting a delay until the last possible second. That tells me that it's coming from on high. Because, for example, back when Assassin's Creed Shadows was delayed from Valentine's Day, February 14th, to March, when it would eventually launch, the employees, the team at Ubisoft didn't know it was being delayed until like when it dropped publicly for everybody, whenever that was, in like January or whenever they revealed that. So you know, it can happen sometimes, basically, when an executive is like, okay, nope, delay it. He makes the call, they delay it, put it publicly, and then everybody finds out at the same time. But in this case, it would be particularly crazy because Bungie's not like this. It's not 20,000 employees like a Ubisoft, you know, it's not on that scale. So you'd think that people would be aware of it. But anyway, let's see what he says.
The inevitable has just happened. PlayStation and Bungie finally admitted what everybody already knew. Marathon is not ready, and it will not release in 3 months. Even before the plagiarism scandal, even before the alpha test, people doubted the September release date. It just felt wrong. And not just out of reflexive hate. This game had been marred in controversy. Bungie had been marred in controversy for years and years. But now the...
Yeah, and it's got to be very much reiterated. Like, the stolen art stuff is bad. But before that, everybody kind of agreed it needed to be delayed. It didn't have enough content. It didn't have enough variety. It didn't have, like, it just wasn't ready. It wasn't ready. And then all that stuff happened. So it just needed more time. It wasn't, you know, even the hardcore fans, the people who literally made YouTube channels and X accounts and TikTok pages and stuff dedicated to Marathon in the hopes it becomes like a Tarkov, it becomes a Destiny level thing. Even those people were like, it needs more time. It needs more time. So this is not, again, like something people are saying out of a deep-seated hatred for Bungie. It's, even the fans have been saying it since before all this really started going down.
Companies are facing reality. After endless streams of concern, they have admitted that the player's voice was, quote, strong and clear. And the upshot is that Marathon is now indefinitely delayed. Marathon's reveal 2 months ago started a fairly unbelievable string of problems. Now, on the surface, the reveal did look slick, polished, a new art direction, a very artistically yummy trailer, and yes, a new entry into the extraction gameplay genre. But audiences were immediately divided. Number one, they didn't recognize this new Marathon from the Marathon that they knew from decades ago. This felt like quite the miscalculation, but it's one that was compounded.
And I'm also, maybe I'm in the minority here. I think the number of people who played the original Marathon decades ago, that number of people is so small. I just really don't think it's that like big of a deal that it's not that similar. Maybe I'm wrong for that. I just genuinely don't see it as a big deal. Like, yeah, it doesn't really look like that game from decades ago that very, very few people who are going to be playing Marathon played. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I understand why it's brought up. I understand, hey, it's called Marathon, but it doesn't look anything like the OG games. I get that. I just don't think it's that big of a deal, personally.
On because Bungie wasn't building this game for existing extraction fans. We'll certainly get on to how they felt soon. Now then came the closed alpha, the purely American alpha with heavily restricted codes, all despite many people wanting in. Pretty odd. Then the players...
Yeah, they had like 450,000 people in their Discord server that you had to enter into to get a chance to get one of the codes. So I saw people bringing up like Steam concurrent player counts and stuff and be like, oh, it's dead. Dude, there were hundreds of thousands of people that wanted in that couldn't get in. They just wouldn't let them. So I don't put much stock into like, oh, the closed alpha playtest had only this many players. Like, it literally, like, what are we doing? You know, there were a lot more people who wanted to try that didn't get the chance to.
Who did get in, well, they found that something was off. PC players were outraged at mandatory aim assist.
Only going to ruin the PC part of the game. You're just watering down PC. You're making PC and mouse and keyboard players basically feel like shit
Bungie later removed it. The hero kits were kind of interesting, but they didn't feel balanced and they didn't feel fully developed. PvE elements did get some praise, but there were missing genre standards, and they got brutalized for that. No solo mode, no proximity chat. So if you were a diehard Extraction fan, this game was really not trying to woo you over.
Well, and their excuses for it were weird. Like the solo thing, I think honestly their excuses for that were fair. They said this is a hero-based game. We have a stealth character. And so when we tested solo queues, everybody ran the stealth character and nobody did anything for the entire match. And when we asked those players to rate it on like a level 1 to 10 in fun factor, it rated very, very poorly. So we decided not to do it. I would say they should figure out a way to make it fun instead of just giving up on it, and that seems to be what they're doing now. But I thought that at least made sense. With the proximity chat, they straight up said that they were afraid of the toxicity, and that's why they didn't do it. And like that's a dumb reason. That's just dumb. You know, it's like it wasn't, oh, it's a technical concern, or oh, it's about balance. No, they said we're worried about toxicity. I'm like, bro, just if somebody doesn't like it, they turn it off. Like, we're adults, dude. This game, I think it does have an M rating. It might. I don't understand how these like 40-year-old men and women can be like, we're worried it's going to hurt your fifis, so we're not putting it in the game. Like, shut up. Come on, dude.
And that was quite strange. It was a game that didn't look like its IP, entering a genre, but not specifically for players who actually like that genre, which, you know, would appear to be quite risky. Now, of course, the Bungie strength is bringing things to new audiences, but the closed nature of the testing meant that casual players, masses of casual players, couldn't discover if they liked the game. And then it got worse. Arc Raiders, another extraction shooter long in development, had a closed beta, and it went viral. If you're wondering why, it's because it had all the features that Marathon didn't, plus a heap of polishing. And then on top of all of that, the plagiarism hit. An artist accused Bungie of ripping off her designs. Bungie reviewed the claim. They admitted that it was true, that specific assets were in fact stolen. They promised to make it right with that artist. They blamed somebody who had left during pre-production, but with the broad years-long narrative going against the studio, especially the studio's leadership, and the specific narrative around Marathon going very bad very fast, it was quite brutal. The art director, Joe Cross, really did become public enemy number one for many people, and that meant that when he went onto this stream, it was a very awkward situation.
Dude, that really was tough to watch. That one was really tough to watch, because this guy, Joe Ziegler, game director, he came on to the team after like they had done all of this. So after the art stuff had happened, according to their story, that artist left the company. He never met them. He never saw them. So he, like the art theft stuff, he has nothing to do with. And then also he's just trying to make the best with the limited amount of time they have. And they apparently haven't had much. So I do feel bad for Joe. As for Joseph Cross, I haven't met this guy. He wasn't at the playtest thing that we did. They had a different artist on their team do his presentation for him. He just wasn't there for some reason across like 2 days that they did that. But yeah, man, it was tough to watch. This was a tough stream to watch. And the fact that they still had to do it was insane. They did a developer play MA. Ask us any questions about the game, we'll answer them. And this is like a day or two after the scandal drops. You can tell they haven't slept a wink. It's been keeping them up all night. Years of work about to go down the drain. Like, they feel horrible, they look horrible, and they were still forced to go on and do this stream. And it's just like, again, the executive leadership is insanely bad.
The plan had been to show gameplay and discuss Marathon, but well, they had to do a review of all of their assets. And with this drama happening, they basically couldn't show any gameplay. That just led...
Yeah, it's not the first time for Destiny that they've been accused. But like there were some other ones, like I think the Nerf gun, they said that was a Hasbro issue, I believe. So there's been other things associated with Destiny and with Bungie when it comes to like art theft stuff. So I don't think that's the first time, but this is probably the first one that's like so ridiculously clear where it's like it's literally in the game. They can't say it was the toy company. They can't point the finger elsewhere, you know?
To a very awkward, very painful looking stream. One where Bungie staff...
Well, and that's what made it even weirder, is that this was supposed to be a Play MA where they show gameplay to answer questions about the game. But because of all of this art stuff, they didn't use any gameplay footage because they were scrubbing it of all of the assets. And so they just kind of sat there and talked about the game. It was so awkward. They should have canceled it and people would have understood. The fact that they were forced to go on camera was just so weird.
Couldn't say anything about Marathon's development or how they would fix this newest problem, let alone the various other problems. And all of this in a world where Marathon was supposed to launch in September, just months away, which was never going to happen. Nobody in the public by that stage expected that it would hit its release date, and now the inevitable has thankfully finally happened. Now that we've got the lightning summary of how we got here, let's talk about the delay. So yes, it's delayed. Bungie gave no new release date, and in this Bungie.net update, they said they won't even talk publicly until later this fall. So it essentially seems that the old release date is in fact going to be the release date of a potential release date, or perhaps the release date of a potential release window, pending, changes and stuff. And it's all...
Yeah, and this is why it's kind of important to understand whether this decision was coming from on high at Sony and Bungie people didn't even know about it until the last second, or if it came from Bungie. Because it could be that Bungie negotiated something where they're like, hey, we need more time for this. We just straight up do. We will sacrifice this and this and this. We'll take money from our Destiny 2 budget. We'll put it over here. That might be part of it. If it's coming from on high, from like Sony, and Sony is the one footing the bill, and Sony's like, you're going to get more time, but we're going to fix this and you got to figure it out. Then I think it's more likely in the fall they announce that they're releasing like in December or in January, and it's going to be a pretty tight turnaround. Either way, I don't think that they are buying themselves a ton of time. Like some people have said, okay, they're going to push it to like 2027 and add a single player campaign. No. I do not think that's happening here. I think what happens is that they add a couple more of these quality of life features. They probably add some more loot stuff. They tweak some UI stuff. They probably get the ranked mode figured out and probably solo queues and prox chat. I think that is about the extent of it, and that's what the game is going to be. I don't think they're going to be doing anything totally insane. People are saying, oh, they're going to pivot to a single player game. No, they're not. That's not how this works.
Also, when we're going to get a progress update. And as for the progress that's going on, they outlined changes for 3 core areas that are all designed to address alpha criticisms. First, upping the survival game. So they're making the PvE and PvP more challenging and more rewarding.
Let's see. We've talked about this before, so I don't want to necessarily rehash all of that.
If they improve all of the other things, then perhaps everything else will fall into place. So, Bungie's developers are going to have a lot of work to do. They're thankfully going to get many more months to do that work than planned. But here's an interesting detail. According to Paul Tassi's sources, Bungie's staff found out about the delay at the same time that we did.
I didn't see this tweet from Paul Tassi. Most of Bungie found out about the Marathon delay right now. So according to Paul's sources, they found out, a lot of people at the studio found out, but not everybody. Not everybody. Most of Bungie found out about the Marathon delay right now. Woof. Woof, dude. Maybe tone down the hero shooter aspect. How do you tone that down? Like, it's either a hero shooter or it's not. Like, like, how do you do that? I don't think you can. I think it's either a hero shooter or it's not a hero shooter. And I think for them, it is a hero shooter. So that's what they're doing. And at this point, to walk that back and to change it would take so much time and be so transformative. It doesn't make sense. A sidekick shooter, an NPC shooter. Man, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I don't know, man. I think that makes me think that probably it was coming from on high, which is funny because Herman was pretty insistent that they were doubling down on it. They were confident in it, like a couple of days before. He didn't act like they needed a delay.
We saw their investor presentation. One thing is crystal clear. PlayStation is taking Marathon very, very seriously. It filled multiple slides in their recent investor presentation and their fireside chat. They framed
Oh my God, I forgot about this slide.
multiple slides in their recent investor presentation and their...
It kind of gives you an idea. So track record of growing game IP into franchises, okay? So franchise lifetime engagement, hours. The metric is hours, okay? It's why I've said a lot for these companies, they care about playtime, because playtime is the stats are pretty clear. Like if you have high playtime hours and hour counts, players will be more willing to spend money or more money on that IP. So if they spend 100 hours playing Uncharted, they are more likely to pay, say, $70 or $80 for Uncharted 5 because they've shown that they're really connected to the IP. If they spend less hours, that indicates that maybe they're not as into the IP, they're not as supportive of it. So typically, gameplay hours directly correlate to willingness and capacity to spend. Historically, that's the thing. It's why games, or it's why companies like Xbox, Game Pass pays out for most contracts based on hours played. So if you put your game on Game Pass, you might get a signing bonus. You might not. It just depends on case by case basis. But how developers get paid is by the hours you spend playing their games. So if you spend 200 hours playing a little 3-hour indie game, they make a lot more money probably, I would guess, than if you bought that game on Steam for $5. That it's way more profitable to them there because again, hours and engagement time is the key thing they're looking for. And here they're showing a lineup of their IP and the IP that they've been able to grow into enduring franchises. And you can see Horizon, the thing that Herman pushes so fervently, is lower on their chart. This is as of March 31st, 2025, but it's lower on the list. Uncharted's up here. This includes all of the games in the franchise. Okay. So they have Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West, Call of the Mountain, the VR game, and Horizon Adventures, which is the Lego game. Uncharted here with 1, 2, 3, and 4. They don't have the Lost Legacy as part of this, which is interesting. I would have thought that they would because that's a spin-off standalone game, but apparently they're not including it. The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2 remastered, and then just the plain Last of Us. I'm guessing maybe the show. No, okay, I guess it's the first. So they're just bundling all of that. Okay, so first game, remaster the first game. The second game, the remake of the first game. There you go. Destiny's up there. Spider-Man's up there. Gran Turismo is up there. The show is up there. And God of War majestically caps all of it. It's a much bigger franchise than some of these other ones. It's had many more entries, but God of War is certainly a big deal for them. Certainly. And then they have their emerging IP. Astrobot, Helldivers, and Ghost. They're hoping to develop these IP into one of these behemoths. It's interesting because I think a lot of people already think of Ghost as being one of those big IP, but they don't, I think, track it the same way. They don't interpret it the same way. Helldivers 2, this is a weird one because it's an emerging IP for them, but the company Arrowhead, they've already said their next game is not going to be partnered with Sony. So yes, it's a Sony game right now, but like I don't think that they're not buddying up with the developers long term. They are kind of doing their own thing now. How does Sony track PS2 hours? Great question. I don't know. They may just be guesstimating or something. I don't know. Going based off of units sold. Might be looking at backwards compatibility stuff. I have no idea. But yeah, that's a great question. Astrobot, they obviously want to put a lot of effort into Astrobot. It didn't sell an insane number of copies. I think it sold like 1.5 million or something. But it won Game of the Year last year at the Game Awards. So they obviously want to give more attention to that, even though it's not a commercial heavy hitter in the same way as some of these others. And then new IP, you can see that they list Marathon and Fair Game $. That's what they're betting on. That like these are their emerging IP. And they're showing this in the same slide as like MLB The Show, God of War, Gran Turismo, Destiny, Last of Us, Spider-Man, Uncharted, Horizon. And then they're putting Fair Game $, and Marathon next to those. Like maybe. But still. Didn't they ditch the $? Well, they did, but then in this artwork, it still is there. So what they're doing is they now are saying it's Fair Games. So, and in one picture I saw, they redid the logo where it was just an S. And so it was just Fair Games without the $. I seriously think it's because people have been making fun of it, calling it Fair Game $. Sorry. And so they are trying to rebrand it. It's not my fault. You put a dollar sign in a game being published by a multi-billion-dollar company that's all about eating the rich. Like, yeah, we're going to make fun of you. It's really out of touch. I'm sorry. But yeah, they have others in development. Yeah, where's Concord? Also a great question. If this slide were presented a year before, Concord would be right here. But they, dumped that pretty quickly. So anyway, but this is why it's important to understand these slides, not just on what's being shown clearly, but it really betrays the intention and the vision that they have. Their goal and what Herman thinks is possible is to get Fair Games and Marathon in this list. He thinks it can compete up in the same echelon as Destiny, Gran Turismo, and the show. And I mean, maybe, but man, I am not seeing it. Same with Fair Games, like maybe, but I think like these are stretches, I love Helldivers. Helldivers is really, really good. I wouldn't put it up in this category yet. Maybe one day, but it's not quite there yet, dude. Like, that's why it's emerging. I guess we can say that.
Their fireside chat. They framed Marathon
Sorry. Herman!
repeatedly as core to next fiscal year plans.
So, building foundation and strengthen capabilities. Establish a portfolio of successful live service titles. You can see fiscal year 21, the show. Destiny 2 in 22. Helldivers 2 in 2023. Marathon was supposed to launch at the end of fiscal year 2024. We all know kind of how that went. And then they also, again, have Fair Games listed here as well. There are others they're working on. We know that they're working on a Horizon online game. We know that they're working also on a Horizon MMO that is being developed by a separate team. So they will have an online game that's basically, it's rumored to be basically Monster Hunter, but Horizon. And then mixed with like Fortnite, Sea of Thieves art style. And then we also know that they're going to be doing this like MMO. I don't know if it's going to play like a Dune or if it's going to play like New World. Like I have no idea, but they're doing that. So they have 2 Horizon things in the works too that will presumably be going a little further down this list. But yeah, this is their vision. This is what they're putting billions of dollars into.
That means any point between May 2025 and April 2026. So I guess that's your very, very big launch window. And they positioned it as developing IP, right alongside the Ghost series and Astrobot. And they positioned it as
Foundation established a leading position in this console generation, which they did. They've sold way more consoles than everybody else. Single player and creative leadership and consistent delivery. They have delivered high quality games. Astrobot, high quality. Not like a game I'm going to be, writing essays about or anything. Like it's a good game. I understand why it won Game of the Year, but I mean, it's not personally my pride and joy, my love, my flame, my muse. Ghost of Yotei, I'm very excited to see how that turns out. Live services built foundation and strengthen capabilities. Helldivers 2 has been performant. Marathon, though, again, I don't think you can interpret it as anything but a colossal disaster so far. Capitalize on momentum to drive profitable growth and evolve the PlayStation experience. Portfolio of leading and recurrent single player and live service games franchises. Expand franchise reach to PC, TV, movies, anime, and location-based entertainment. Continued financial discipline to strive operating leverage while investing in IP, operations, publishing, and technology. Main takeaways: they need consistent live service releases paired with consistent single player releases, and they want to breach further into PC, which is the first one they list: TV, movies, anime, location-based entertainment. So they want to continue breaking into things like Steam. They want to be doing HBO shows. They want to do spin-off movies. They want to do stuff like that, which we're already seeing, and they're just saying they're going to continue focusing on it and doubling down on it.
as developing IP, right alongside the Ghost series and Astrobot. They also call out strong early engagement for Bungie's bold and innovative new title.
I'm sorry, we talked about this in my video initially on this news. This is like freaking hilarious to frame Marathon as having strong early engagement. Come on, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, we have strong, people are talking about it a lot. Yes, they're saying how much yes, they're saying it looks terrible. And yes, they're saying that plagiarism will make me God. Yes, they're saying this, but like they're talking about it. engagement strong. Like, come on, you know what you're doing. This to me is where this isn't just corporate doublespeak. This is on the same level as like Apple claiming that their AI stuff will do certain things that it just can't do. Like, this is just lying, you know, in my opinion. Allegedly, this is just them saying something that is so blatantly twisted. I think it's a lie by omission. Like, it is hilariously deceptive in how it frames this. If I were an investor not familiar with Marathon, I would see this and I would think that engagements were positive and that this was something that has potential. I would not think that this has been a catastrophic disaster. And that's where I start to feel like, okay, we're getting silly. This is also the first time that they've done one of these earnings calls, presentation, fireside chat things where they didn't take open questions. They only did a pre-recorded, pre-selected question thing so that they didn't have to answer any of these questions about Marathon, and they just pretended like everything was okay. It was kind of shameful in my opinion.
Which is a bloody hilarious statement given all the shit that's happened. But
they say what shareholders want to hear. Yes, but there are also standards. Shareholders who have a lot of money can and will sue companies if the company misled them, because the whole thing in all first world countries that have like any semblance of investment infrastructure is that the company has to be honest with shareholders. Otherwise, they are effectively like defrauding them. It's a major problem. You can't say knowingly something false so that you can profit from the stock going higher. There's been allegations that like Elon has said this about Tesla stuff, where he says like full self-driving is coming out in 2016. If they can prove that he knew that was false when he said it, class action lawsuits out the ass. The problem is for him, like, that was the plan, and then it got delayed, and there were waves of delays and waves of adjustments to the internal schedules, and we still at this point still don't have full self-driving. But that's where the standard, like the standard of evidence is, and that's a separate question from whether it's something that could be sued over or if it's just unethical and slimy. And in this case, I think it's just it's unethical and slimy, because they can say no, engagement that was early was strong. We had a huge number of people talking about the game. We didn't say it was positive because they can say that. They didn't say it was positive. They just said engagement was strong, which is true. It's just, it's a lie by omission, right? You know, it's, well, technically I didn't say that. I said what was technically true. If you interpreted it the way I wanted you to, that's your problem.
Innovative new title, which is a bloody hilarious statement given all the shit that's happened. But do you notice what they never said? They never said that it launches in September. Bear in mind, this was all weeks before the actual delay would be publicly.
I think again, it's the framing of this schedule and this chart. They do put it in fiscal year 2024, which I believe ends. I think it already ended. So I don't know. It's confusing. I can understand why people watch this and we're like, okay, so it's not being delayed.
Announced. And I think this all suggests something important here. When they put this together for investors, when, say, studio CEO Herman Hulst made his comments, the decision had already been made further up the chain. The evidence? Well, live services and Marathon came up as a standalone question in their pre-recorded chat. And I think it's fair to say that's a chat that is haunted by the ghost of Concord. That's because Hulst framed Concord as, quote, good work and big effort, but also insufficiently differentiated. Which, doesn't sound amazing, but most...
It was interesting. He said that Concord failed because it was not differentiated enough from the competition. Which, whenever you talk about Concord, there's going to be 15 people that are like, it actually failed because the characters looked ugly. And like, that didn't help. But ultimately, I think the primary reasons Concord failed were because it was just another hero shooter that nobody wanted. The competition was already there. And it wasn't that it wasn't just like, it wasn't differentiated enough, because I think it was. Like, it had its own style, it had its own vibe, people were well aware of it. And to borrow a term from PlayStation's own marketing team, it had strong engagement. People talked about it a lot, not positively, but they talked about it a lot. I think ultimately the problem was that it just wasn't a good enough game to justify a premium price point in a highly competitive market. If that's what he means by it wasn't differentiated enough, is that it wasn't good enough, okay. But let's not, like, twist it. Concord wasn't good enough to compete, because what we saw just after that was what? Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is another hero-based, team-based shooter, very similar to other games that Concord was compared to, like Overwatch. And it's blown up. It's been wildly successful because it was just a really good game. It just was. It was really well executed. The post-launch support has been amazing. They handled the early launch period really, really well. And, it was very good. It was also differentiated, I guess. But I think, again, whenever I've heard Herman talk about this stuff, it's always framed in this defensive way that preserves either the his feelings or the feelings of investors. Maybe it doesn't matter which it is. But it feels like there's never any truly honest introspection and reflection with it, because I think Concord just frankly wasn't a good enough game to be successful where it was and when it was. I think if they had a lot more launch features, if they had a bigger and more interesting roster, if they had not screwed up the initial reveal, if they a lot of things had been different. If things were totally different, it would have ended up differently. But I just think Concord, it didn't fail just because, we struggled to define it as different from Overwatch. That's not why it failed, okay? It's because it wasn't good enough. Let's be very clear.
Most importantly, he said...
And it's a game nobody really wanted. People initially had the same reaction to Marvel Rivals. They were like, I didn't ask for another Marvel game that's just Overwatch with Marvel characters. But then they saw it, and it actually was a game that was very unique and that they really connected with.
We have reviewed our processes in the light of this, to deeply understand why the title failed to meet expectations, to ensure we're not going to make the same mistakes again.
Yeah, we've reviewed our processes in light of this, deeply understand why the title failed to meet expectations, to ensure we're not going to make the same mistakes again. And yet I feel like they're making the same mistakes again. Because again, when he describes the mistakes, he's framing it as it wasn't differentiated enough. It needed to be more different. It needed to be more better. I'm not convinced he truly understands why Concord failed, because the doubling down on titles like Marathon and especially titles like Fair Games, I think betrays a misunderstanding. And the fact, I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to see this Horizon game actually get revealed, because the Horizon game will either be just another total disaster and it'll be just really, you made Horizon Monster Hunter crossing over with Fortnite and Sea of Thieves character designs. What are we doing? And people will lose it and hate it. Or it will genuinely be a really good game and people will eat it up and love it, especially after Monster Hunter Wilds has been going through its own fair share of problems, getting mass downvoted on Steam in the last week or so for bad post-launch support, bad performance, and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that cookie crumbles. I'm genuinely very excited. I know we poke fun at Jor all the time and haha, it's going to suck. We joke about it. But genuinely, I think that they could find success with it. We just have to see if they pivoted. I think if they stuck with that art style that leaked a year or two ago, they may be in trouble, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway.
Now, what are those new processes? Well, we can actually see those in Bungie's delay statement. Holst told investors that PlayStation was excited for release. He described the alpha response in very specific terms. We're monitoring the closed alpha cycle the team just gone through, and some of that feedback has been varied, but that's super useful. That's why you do testing. You know what, Herman? Varied is true.
Varied. Again, it just reminds me of Todd Howard when he's like, some people loved Starfield and other people loved it less. It's like, you sly dog. You know what you're doing.
True. It's charitable, but yeah, it's a true way to characterize things. But really what he's doing when he says that is he's selling investors on them making business progress. That as an overall system, Sony are no longer going to do Concords because their systems, the way they run their business, will no longer produce that sort of result. So this tracks. The player engagement idea also resonates here. He talks as well about the validation of assumptions from developers, about test, iterate, test again. And if that sounds familiar, well, that's exactly how Bungie are introducing updates, testing features as they're ready. And throughout the presentation, which we'll dive into more later because, it's a very interesting one, one theme keeps on emerging, and that's PlayStation leadership being more involved in game release decisions and more involved in development reviews. Why? Well, it's fucking obvious, because they won't let studios take risks like Concord did. There is simply too much at stake. We recently praised...
And this could, and in the past, there's been examples of it going well, with some executives being super hyper involved in releases. Like Shuhei Yoshida, when he worked at PlayStation, of course, was very involved. There's the story from the Raising Kratos documentary where Shuhei went and tried God of War in a very early build and gave a ton of feedback. And he was part of the executive team, but he provided a lot of feedback and they worked on it. And that game ended up being phenomenal based on his feedback partially. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other examples also of executives getting really involved in things and just actively screwing them up miserably, because they get involved and they think that they need to do things 15 different ways. And it's not just in video games, it's also in the movie space with like Hollywood executives and CEOs trying to get directly involved in the production of different films because they think they know better than the creatives. And so it could work out for them to have Herman sitting in on a lot of these big design decisions, but I don't know, man. Yeah, Shuhei isn't a clown like Hulse. I mean, I think Shuhei Yoshida is genuinely just at his core, he's a gamer and he's a fan who happens to work in gaming. Like when I saw him at Summer Games Fest, he went to like every single damn booth. It didn't matter how small of a team the developers were. It didn't matter if it was a total indie Tetris spin-off game. It didn't matter if it was like a pixel art murder mystery game. He went to every single booth and played them all. And he was having a great time taking pictures with people. He spent days there going to every single booth because he's an actual diehard fan. He loves it. Jim Ryan, I don't think ever touched a gaming controller in his life. And I'm not sure at this point if Herman's even a gamer, except for Horizon games. So I don't know if he's the guy you want making these decisions either, you know? Like, I just genuinely am not sure if he's the one that's going to be able to see the potential or see when there's a problem. Because again, you got to look at his judgment and grade his capability to make these decisions based on his judgment. And there's reporting suggesting that he thought Concord was going to be a Star Wars level success, that he thought it was innovative and brilliant and stuff. Maybe that's just like corporate hype that he was doing and he didn't actually believe that. But at some point, you know, if anonymous leakers who are familiar with the discussions are saying, no, internally, he was saying it's going to be like a Star Wars level success, that should wake you up and give you pause. Yeah, Sean Layden was a gamer too. Yeah, Sean Layden, also a gamer.
Helldivers for good live service design over monetization, because basically they kind of got FOMO right by making a live service feel live in a way that made sense for the video game bit, not just the business bit. And it seems that video really resonated with you guys. Holy shit, it exploded. Here's the flip side then. In this presentation, we learned that 54% of Helldivers' revenue comes from microtransactions, from the 3.6 million monthly players.
Yeah, buddy.
That success, their first non-MLB live service, basically made PlayStation adamant that they can do it again, that they need to do it again. Investors obviously love the potential here, and that's why, quote, they remain very committed to building a diverse and resilient live service portfolio. Of course, it is diverse at the minute. It's just, diverse in terms of one is alive, one is dead, some...
It's diverse like a cemetery is. You know, there's people that are buried. There's people that have been cremated and are in urns. There's the people in the mausoleums. There's the people that come and visit and go, wow, there's that guy that died. Wow. And then they leave. You know, it's very diverse.
Some are successful, others are killed in the cradle, which is not exactly the type of diverse they're really aiming for. The point, though, is very clear, that Helldivers shows, and again I quote, the level of success we achieve if we get everything right. That's obviously what they're shooting for. So now, they're doing everything that they can to get it right, because...
Honest question, though, and I want to hear from you guys in chat. Honest question. How much of this is luck? Like, as a percentage... Is getting a successful live service game, is it 50% luck? Is it 80% luck? Is it 95% luck? Because I don't think it's all luck, because clearly you have to have a good game at the core. But At some point, I do find it interesting how you can have so many live service games getting pumped out, and some of them are even pretty solid, but if they just don't connect with people, they fail, you know? And I feel like the desire for PlayStation is to find the formula to pump these things out every year and have a new billion-dollar game. And I'm just not sure if that's how this works. I do think there is a component of like luck and market conditions and more situational stuff that they're just not really accounting for. 40% luck, 60 game design, 80% luck, 78%, 70%, 90%, a lot of it. Yeah, 50%. This is 10%, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain. I see what you're doing. 10% reason to remember the name. Well, it's just I think that there's also so many like there's layers to this where if your game launches but the initial hype level is not super high, or if your game launches and it doesn't go viral, which can happen for any number of reasons. Maybe the gameplay itself doesn't contribute it, or it doesn't really work with viral content. You know, like I don't think there's a lot of viral clips being generated for Civ 7, for example. But I do think that there's plenty of viral clips being generated from Tarkov, or being generated from Call of Duty matches or Apex or Marvel Rival matches and stuff, because crazy, wacky things can happen. And certainly Helldivers 2, it really blew up based on that. The potential for viral content to be generated. How many of us saw funny clips of games that people were playing in Helldivers 2 that were just crazy and funny? You know, that can go a long, long way, that, you know, to get people interested in the game and to try it. And I just think if you don't have that, like the stars align in that way, even if the game is solid, it's just not going to find success and it's going to die out, unfortunately. But that's just the case. And I think that with so much of it, I mean, either way, I'm seeing nobody in chat, nobody's saying it's 0%. Everybody agrees there is a decent component of this equation that is luck. And if there is a certain component of this equation that's based on luck, that means that you're going to be putting stuff out there and you're just going to have to hope that you get lucky and that this game, just the dice roll the right way, you know? And if that's the component, if that's how this works, you know, that's tough for a business to tolerate. When you're just rolling the dice, even if the odds are in your favor, even if you're like, hey, our systems are really good, it's only down to 10% luck or 5% luck or whatever. The fact that there's, you know, 5 in 100 occasions where you just like lose everything because you got unlucky, that's not great, dude. That's not what you want. And it feels like right now, like maybe the distinction needs to be what percentage of luck should it be versus what it actually is for PlayStation right now. I think right now it feels like it's like 85% luck. You know, Arrowhead makes a really solid Helldivers game. It pops off. It does really well. By most measures, they didn't realize how successful it was going to be because they barely marketed it. They didn't have server infrastructure set up for it. They didn't expect people to connect with that game. And every time Sony really tries with a live service game, they don't do that great. So it seems like right now it's a lot more luck based, which is obviously what I think they're trying to overcome. They don't want that. They want it to be more locked and loaded. Because, I mean, to be fair to Herman, if they can get it to the point where they're able to pump out a new Helldivers 2 every year, yeah, that adds billions to their market value. But if that only happens once every 5 years because all the other ones are flopping, that's also not great, you know? It's not great. Lord Sincross, thank you for the 5. Remember, WF, DE didn't try 200 live services. They did one and gave it their all, and it is the most consistent game on Steam since forever. What are the acronyms? Do you mean Warframe? They didn't try 200 live services. They did one, gave it their all, and is the most consistent game on Steam since ever. Well, I think with Warframe specifically, that's a game that sort of has just been so consistent for a decade that has helped it just stick around as long as it has and make a ton of money as it has. But that's also the other piece of this. I do think if they had put Concord out and they had stuck with it and invested a ton into it, they could have had some sort of recovery. Because I do think there are people that like to root for the underdog. And at some point, I think people would have been like, I'm going to try Concord again. And if it was really good, they might get their friends to hop back in. Look at what freaking happened with Battlefront 2. Out of nowhere, I guess it was shows and movies and stuff that were doing well on Disney Plus. But, Battlefront 2 of all games, that was a disaster back in 2017, an international business disaster. That game even saw a major comeback in the last few months. So I think Concord could have had one eventually, but they would have to stick with it for years to continue improving it, continue making it better. And that just doesn't make sense for their business. Again, it feels like most of Sony's live service stuff is based around getting the package, packaging it up, getting it all ready to go. And then you chuck it off the skyscraper and they watch it fall and they hope desperately that it falls in a way where the egg inside the package doesn't crack. And if it doesn't crack, boom, we did it. And if it does, okay, we'll clean it up. Let's try again. And they just move on. They don't try to repair it. They don't try to do anything. They just move on. And I think that that's the broader strategy. Ubisoft was known for doing that for a while, lost it eventually. You mean like the repairing it and working on it repeatedly? Is that what you mean? I guess sort of. They do tend to support their games long term. I'll give them that. Even something like Star Wars Outlaws, they made a ton of improvements to that for a while. So I think they are getting there. Yeah, supporting long time. I think it deserves credit when publishers do it and developers do it, but unfortunately it's becoming more and more rare because it's just so freaking expensive. $50 million eggs, dude. Some of these eggs are worth $200 million, and they're like, oh well, let's try again. It's crazy, dude. It's absolutely wild. And like I said, in any other business, if you go to your boss and you say, hey, I lost us like $200 million, you lose your job. Herman gets promoted. Figure that one out.
Marathon is their immediate future. There is the other game, Fair Games, that is still listed as upcoming, and that's especially
Fair Game
relevant
$sign.
after Jade Raymond left Haven Studio, apparently after poor internal testing. So I suppose they'll be doing more iteration on that one as well. But overall, the live services will continue, whether that's from partners like Arc System Works or doing a Marvel game, or internal teams like Bungie, because basically, even though Concord was a big failure, there's simply too much potential for another Helldivers in their view. So here's...
Well, and you can go back and you can look at the videos we made 5 years ago when Sony was first saying they're doubling down on live service. And it's simply because what we said back then was Sony is working on 12 different live service games, and they're going to just give them all a shot. And the hope is one or two of them popping off will pay for all the others, and it's, if you have a big lineup of stuff, if you got Project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The potential for each one of these, if they pop off, let's just make it an easy $1 billion. Okay, you make $1 billion. Each one of these, let's say on average, some of them will be more, some will be less, but let's say on average, each one of these costs like a solid 100 million. Okay, some of them will be 200 million, some of them will be 50 million, but let's say on average they're each 100. You can have failures. You can have some of these that just lose money. 5 in a row, you're down 500 million, right? But then you have one success. Yeah, you have your Helldivers 2. And that comes out at $1 billion, and all of a sudden you're up 500 million. Wow. Now we can afford failure. And we're back at zero. But because of the one success, because of how much money a success makes, they can afford to have a lot of failures. And they just hope by the time they hit number 12, they get another success that brings them down to that $1 billion mark. So even though they wasted 10 projects that were like catastrophic failures that made no money, if they can get 2 successes, they're up $1 billion. And technically it's a win for them. And that's been the entire strategy since the beginning of the PS5 era for Jim Ryan, was we're going to just throw out like so much crap. And then if we get the success that pops and prints money, we're good. And it's true, like these games make crazy amounts of money. If you have not seen like the amount of revenue that games like Marvel Rivals or games like even though it's struggling comparatively, Overwatch, any of those games, they make so much freaking money, dude. It's insane. It really is. I wonder if they've reported recent numbers for Marvel Rivals. As a result, NetEase said they've seen $2.9 billion in revenue for Marvel Rivals over the past quarter. In one quarter, they took in $2.9 billion in revenue, thanks to over 40 million players. I mean, maybe it's how this is phrased. Maybe that's total revenue for the company, but I don't think so. They say 2.9 billion revenue from Marvel Rivals, from that game. Like, this is why PlayStation wants one of these. This is why. Good God almighty. What percent is Nikki? I don't know. I got to talk to her. Dude, she casually told me. She's like, yeah, I'm at like, whatever it is. I don't remember exactly what it was. Hundreds of hours. She's at like 300 hours or something because she lords all of her characters. She goes and plays ranked. Like, she goes hard. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm past 100 hours in Marvel Rivals either. I basically just play it when like my brothers hop on or when I'm playing with Nikki like once a week or something. Like, I don't play Marvel Rivals. I don't grind it or anything. But I realized at that point that my wife is a tryhard when it comes to Marvel Rivals. She grinds it out, dude. She grinds it out. It's wild. Luke, that looks like it's just for December. Yeah, for the first like big launch. I think it's technically February. I guess it depends on their quarter. But if it's the holiday quarter, then yeah. That's insane. But that's why these games are worth the risk. Because if you get a game that can make billions in one quarter. Yeah, so I think this is phrased weird. So to be clear, NetEase is saying 2.9 billion. They phrase it down here. It's 2.9 billion from Marvel Rivals. I'm going to adjust this. I think Jake Valentine, I think this is just written kind of weird. I think their company had 2.9 billion total, including Marvel Rivals. I don't think Marvel Rivals accounted for all of that. But still, it made a ton of money either which way. They don't link the full article or financial statement, which is frustrating. I understand 99% of people don't give a crap about that, but still. Video Game Chronicle also reported of it. Yeah, net revenue of 2.9 billion. So this includes their other games too, but still, it makes, even if you say it's 50% of it for its launch quarter or it's a third, it's still damn close to $1 billion in a quarter, which is ungodly. It's wild. Okay. These things make so much freaking money. It's upsetting, frankly. But that's why these companies can risk having a flop. They can risk it because even if it flops, they can afford a few flops for every success and they'll still end up profitable. It's a wild way to make money, but it's also kind of beautifully ironic because for a lot of these companies, they make a lot of the money in these live service games by utilizing like gacha mechanics, by utilizing things like loot boxes, loot crates, things like that, basically gambling. And then their whole business is basically gambling on these games being successful or not. And it's just kind of, it's really poetic in a way. That they lose money for the same
Eric Branke
reason.
donated $9.99 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
For Sony specifically, I think they need to get like 80% lucky. Fans of PlayStation Studios aren't sweating for the next hero shooter. They're still missing the PS4 era of SP titles.
I think, thank you for the 10, first of all, but I do genuinely think that you're right, that PlayStation fans, the people that they've been like cultivating for so long, they are not particularly big fans of the live service push. Most of them are like rolling their eyes at it. There's still a lot of players who will buy the live service and play them, as we saw with Helldivers, and Marvel Rivals too. I mean, there's players out there that want games like that and will spend a lot of time and money on them. But the core fan base of PlayStation, yeah, they don't really give a crap.
He took my thing.